Everything works. Rodolfo, hello. Ike, Newt, and the formal top hat. Nice to see you all here. I'm just going to adjust the camera a little bit so we get maybe a better shot. We're going to get a little bit of glare. That's probably unavoidable to some extent, considering it's a glass vivarium in a lighted room. But we'll go with it. I'm going to see if we can get some close-ups of the frogs feeding. So, welcome everyone. Now the ornament, I've actually got two of them. There's another one. Can you see that one there? Merry Aquarimax Christmas. They were from Kate, and she is a long-time subscriber of the channel, and she sent me these, and I thought it was awesome. So they're hanging on our tree, both of them. Eric, hello, and thank you, Formal Top Hat. Let's get a wider view of the setup. I do need to clip some plants, but as you can see, I've got the oak leaf fig growing on the left here, and then I've got some Selaginella or peacock moss growing here. This is a rabbit's foot fern here, some lemon button fern out here in the front, and then there are three different types of bromeliads. I'm going to actually start. This is the parent of these two bromeliads, and then there's another species in the middle with little polka dots. It's a little harder to see. And then over here, the third species of bromeliad that's pupping all over the place. And there's various little patches of moss and whatnot in here as well. So that's just kind of a little tour. And of course, I've got my three dart frogs in here. So I see that Gaetan is here, Critters and More. Ken Malinsky, excellent. So Ken, I'm glad you got my warning that we're going live. I've been trying to do that. So still so weird not seeing a tank that's 2 stories tall. 2 stories tall. I am curious. What do you mean? I'd like to know. Okay, well what I think I'm going to do now, actually I'm going to try to adjust the lighting really quickly in the room, and then I'm going to feed the frogs a little bit and we'll watch them eat. It'll be fun. Okay, let's see if that made any difference. I can't really tell if it did, if that made a difference or not. Not sure. Any feedback on the lighting or the focus? Here, it's a little bit tricky to focus through glasses, I'm sure you know. But I'm going to feed these guys, and then I'm going to address a question. Oh, Ike had a question. Who will be the frog victim? Today we're doing Hydei fruit flies, dusted with some Rapashi Calcium Plus. Those are the menu items of choice today, and here they come. I'm going to do this in spurts, I think. I'll put in a little batch of flies. We'll see what we get in terms of activity on the frog's part. Hopefully they'll come out and eat them for us. They should. And yeah, they'll generally come out. It might take them a minute or two, but they'll generally come out and eat. They're probably hungry. So that one plant guy, oh, I see a dart frog moving, coming down. Do you see it in the background there? Yep. That is my male. He's actually the one who was the model for the Christmas ornament that Make It Kate made for me. That's in the thumbnail to this video. So the male's out first. I have 2 females as well. Okay. So how long have I had the dart frogs? That one plant guy. Let me think. Oh, I see another frog headed this way on the other side of the vivarium, but it's coming. So we'll see what we get in a minute here. And I'm not sure how long I've had the frogs. I want to say it's about 4 years or so I've had this trio of dart frogs. I'm not sure if that's exactly it, but it's something like that. I should go back and check. But I've had them for a while. They've produced a number of tadpoles for me. I think I've sold 4 tadpoles, well, froglets, that they have produced over time. So, and Catherine, you made the live stream. Nice to see you here. I know that you generally enjoy the live streams the morning after due to the time difference, but I'm glad to see you in a live one. Oh, the formal top pad. I see what you're saying. The old frog tank was very tall. Okay, got it. Yes. So there's still a little bit of reflection now. I'm guessing we probably can't change that. And Killcast. Nice to see you here. And you're right, Newt. They're going to be flightless dead flies really soon. Very true. And Make It Kate. Nice to see you here. Thanks again for the ornaments. I just was showing them off. You probably saw the one in the thumbnail, and I just showed the other one off just a second ago. So I really love them. And everybody who sees them says the same thing, that they're just awesome. So really appreciate that you made those. That is so cool. And Eric, how do you handle draining excess water, and how often do you miss? Well, I haven't had to drain excess water from this vivarium because I missed, let's see, probably 5 times a week in this tank. Leucomelis can handle it a little less misted than some of the other species. And so a lot of people do it like twice a day, but I find that with the amount of ventilation I have and so on, I'm usually fine to do it about 5-6 times a week. Give them a nice wet down and they're fine. And I would say draining excess water, I haven't had to do that. It does evaporate. I do have some ventilation in the tank. I actually have a whole video on making the vent in the back with some really fine fabric, some fine mesh. I had a professional window maker actually make it for me. The whole process and all the materials and everything cost about $100, but it was worth it to me because I needed a vent that was going to be fly proof, and the flies aren't getting through that mesh. They're not getting through it. There's no way. So I'm going to put a few more flies in here because it looks like they've kind of dispersed and the frog has taken off a little bit. Put dinner back where dinner goes and he'll probably come back. I see he's looking at it again. Yet there he goes. So, so draining the excess water. I haven't had to from here, but what I've done in the past with other vivariums is I will scoot the substrate out of the corner and then use a turkey baster to draw it out. The best way to do it, in my opinion, is to put a standpipe in. When you build it, you install a standpipe that goes all the way down to the bottom of below every layer of substrate, below the drainage layer and everything. You drill some holes in a PVC pipe down near the bottom, some small holes so substrate can't get in, and then you cap the top. And if you use like the black ABS rather than PVC, really, it's kind of nice because it blends it a little bit better. And then you put it behind a plant or something where you can't see it. But if you ever need to, you can pull that cap off. And you don't have to use a cap. You can use, put some filter floss from aquarium filter floss or something in there so the frogs aren't getting down there and isopods aren't, falling in and whatnot. Put something in like that, and then you can just stick a tube in there, like a siphon, and drain out whatever excess water you need to, because too much water touching the layer of ABG mix style substrate can cause a huge problem. So Catherine, past your bedtime, but you're here, which is awesome. So this is your chance to ask questions and whatnot if you want to. Junior, hello. Zen Moss. And I do kind of have a guide to these dart frogs. It's called something like Bumblebee Dart Frogs, Easier Pets Than I Thought. And it basically goes through what I do to take care of them, that I made about a year after I got them. So it's several years old. And the formal top hat. If you put these frogs into a natural environment, how long would it take for them to become poisonous again? Good question. I'm really not sure about that, although I would say that I think I read, and I could be totally off on this, but I think I read within 3 months the frogs lose their toxins. So it might not be too far off before they started becoming toxic again if they were in their natural environment. I'm not sure whether or not these frogs would survive in the natural environment. Not that I'm going to do it, but just hypothetically, I'm not sure whether or not they would survive if they were released into a wild environment. But an interesting question. And the one plant guy, I do have isopods in here. I think I've got a couple of different species that I put in here. The last ones that I put in here were a Florida Fast. But I also have Tarragonas in here. I put in here at the beginning, I think, or close to the beginning of this vivarium. I put powder blues, which did not do too well in here. So I think Florida Fast are probably doing pretty well in here. Usually only one species wins out if you put multiple species in. I should look in the leaf litter and see what actual species are going on in there. It's interesting that the male is coming out to eat, and the females, I've seen them mobilizing. I see one of the females on the other side of the tank, not interested in eating particularly, so that's interesting. So critters and more. I just found an Exoterra for cheap, 24 by 18 by 24. Thinking of upgrading my loops to this tank. Do you think 4 to 5 would be too many for this size? I have 3 in their current setup. So a 24 long, 18, are you talking about the 24 cube? Well, it's like the 24 cube except for shorter? Like it's 18 inches tall, that one? Or I'm trying to, okay. I get the measurements mixed up sometimes. We have an 18 by 18 by 24 with a crested gecko in it over here. So you're saying it's 24, 24, and 18 deep from front to back? Is that how it works? Okay. Interesting. You might be able to do 4 to 5, but you know, you might not get a lot of breeding going on because the females would probably be competing a lot and eating each other's eggs. 4 to 5. But you could probably do that. So Killcast, on a scale from 1 to 10, how hard are dart frogs to keep as pets? Well, they're really pretty easy in a lot of ways. And I guess it just totally depends on your scale. If you say like Ophiuchus shrimp, which you can literally leave alone for months at a time, are a 10 on the scale of ease, and something very, very difficult like I don't know, like a crocodile or a giraffe or something. Dart frogs would probably be, I don't know, they'd probably be an 8 or 8.5. They're really easy in a lot of ways. The main thing is setting up their enclosure is not cheap. You're probably going to run, assuming, well, I don't want to make any assumptions exactly that we're going to be hard and fast rules, but in most cases you're going to need to put out about $200 or more to make their setup at the beginning. Once you've done that, if you have fruit fly breeding down and you consider culturing fruit flies easy, then keeping dart frogs is quite easy, very easy. So, okay, it's 24 inches wide, 24 inches tall, and 18 deep. Okay, I was envisioning slightly different dimensions. I'd go ahead with a 3, but I probably wouldn't put 4 to 5 in there. And Ike, could different colored dart frogs be able to cohabitate? It can happen. I don't necessarily recommend doing it, and breeding them that way is probably not going to be as productive. But you can do it. I've seen people do it in zoos and whatnot. I'm going to remove this from the tripod so I can show you the female. She's sitting over here and not eating this female. I don't know where the other female is at all. She's hiding somewhere, I guess. But I thought we could come at least say hi. Sorry, my reflection is in the way here. But it would be fun to see her. Okay, so Mr. 14, what's your opinion on dart frogs being housed with mourning geckos? I prefer not to do it. I tried it. And what ended up happening is that the lid that the dart frogs needed in order to retain enough humidity to keep them happy was, one, really a little bit too much humidity for the mourning geckos, and second, it was they were getting stuck in it. I had some get damaged, and at least one that got killed because of that lid. I think maybe more than that. So do not recommend that necessarily. You may be able to find another solution lid-wise, but just cohabitating, these guys are a little bit tricky with mourning geckos. Some people do it successfully and it can work fine, so I'm not going to say it can't happen, but I don't recommend doing it. I don't do it. Zoo, I always see the dart frog enclosures under some sort of black light. Is this okay? Well, it depends on what kind of light, because they do have plant grow lights that look a lot like black lights. Could be something that's going on, and that's a possibility. Junior, can I feed my isopod fruits? Certainly. I feed mine quite a lot of fruit. Well, not quite a lot, but I do feed them fruit fairly often, and they like it. Just make sure that it's clean, peeled, washed. That can help. And I did try darkening the room. I turned off the lights in the room, most of them. Excuse me. But we've got ambient light coming in from the windows and whatnot, so that I can't control very well. Otherwise, that would have been nice. The one plant guy, could you feed superworms to dart frogs? They'd have to be very, very tiny superworms. Perhaps you could use hatchling superworms, you know, really, really young ones. That's possible. But I've never tried. They really do like really small things. Formal top hat. Do you still have springtails with the dart frogs? Yep, there are springtails in here. I probably do need to refresh the population in here. It's probably about time, because they do tend to finish them off. You know, they don't eat them all, but they'll eat most of them pretty fast. So yeah, I do have them in here. One thing I wanted to do here is respond to Jose Avila's comment. He had a question about keeping Porcellio expansus, and I wanted to get to that last week, but our live stream got cut off. And so I wanted to talk to him about his Porcellio expansus. He was saying, what is the ideal setup for these isopods? He says his have exploded in population, and he's wondering what my setup was like and what I've been feeding him. I like to feed them mostly fish food pellets. That seems to be the food they respond to most readily. And they're not really big leaf litter eaters compared to a lot of other isopods. And so yeah, that's mostly what I feed them. Their setup is basically the typical moisture gradient for any isopod. So a mossy hydration station on one side. About 1/4 of the vivarium has the mossy portion, and then the rest of it is pretty dry. Keep that really pretty dry. And then I give them concave pieces of bark, several concave pieces of bark right up to the moss, so that they can regulate their moisture needs, and then some further away from the moss. And they tend to stay in the ones closer to the moss, but they don't like to get right up to it too often, to the moss. And then that seems to be the setup that works. High ventilation, and they do really well. So hopefully that helps, Jose. And I started talking about that around 16 minutes. So hopefully I'm just kind of reminding myself so I can tell Jose that. There's a female. Maybe she's going to make her way over here. Let's see what she does. So Catherine, that is Twilly with a Y, the first spelling. And he is about 8 or 10 feet away from me right now. So yeah, he's talking up a storm. He likes to, when he hears people talking, he likes to talk too. So that's probably what he's doing. And the formal top hat. There seemed to be a hefty amount of springtails in the previous enclosure. How did you transport them? Well, I think mainly I just added, I added leaf litter from the other vivarium into this one, and I think I also separately seeded this vivarium. I think that's what I did. I could be wrong about that. It's been a while, but I'm pretty sure I just did it that way, because I always have, you know, springtail cultures about. So I think that's what I did. Okay, finally the female is starting to hunt a little bit. I was a little worried she wasn't looking hungry. But where's the other female? I haven't seen her at all today. That's a little unusual. Usually when I feed them, they're out and about. And maybe she just ate enough on Sunday when I fed them last that she doesn't care. So Killcast, if I were to do a vivarium with just isopods and springtails, what species of isopods would do good in an enclosure like that? Well, depending on your ventilation and so on, it's if isopods are the main inhabitant and springtails are the cleanup crew, then you can basically build that for whatever type of isopod you want. So you're going to have to change the ventilation and whatnot based on which species you're keeping. But you can do great. I mean, that's, most of my isopods, I have 50 something enclosures with isopods in them. and springtails in the vast majority of them, if not all of them. And that's what I'm doing. But if you mean like a glass aquarium with plants, and you're thinking about doing that, and then we can even look at what type of plants you want and what sort of humidity and so on. But lots of different isopods can do well in a setup like that. It's going to depend on how much ventilation and humidity you're going to have in there. So last springtail question from Formal Top Hat. How do you keep them controlled and happy whilst also taking care of the other animals' needs? Frogs in this case. Also, are there any animals springtails can't cooperate with? Well, basically, in a dart frog vivarium, you're providing some... Oh, there's the other female. I see her. She's poking out. So let me see if I can get to where she is. She's over there. Sorry, there's mist on the glass. But you can see her back there under the bromeliad, and she's headed this way for a snack. So, good. She was just being a little reticent, but she's going to make it. Make it over here to the snack bar, it sounds like. So, springtails... this is a really good environment for them, except for the fact that they have predators in it. So you don't really need to do a lot because they're not going to overpopulate, because the frogs will help keep the population down. If anything, you may need to periodically refresh the population just because the frogs are going to eat enough of them. They're probably not going to cause their extinction, and there are places where they're breeding, like down here in the substrate, where the dart frogs aren't going to get. But most of the food for the springtails is going to be in the surface layers, the leaf litter layer and above the leaf litter layer, both of those places. And so they're going to be in places where the dart frogs are going to be able to get to them a fair bit. And so just, periodically refreshing the population of springtails is probably about all you need to do in a setup like this. So, so Catherine's budgie likes to do the same thing. That's awesome. Too bad he didn't go to bed, or the budgies could have a chorus together. Are there any animals springtails can't cooperate with? The springtails are almost... there are very few creatures that don't get along with them well. The predatory mites will eat the springtails, of course, and reduce their population. There's a creature called a Nermatean, a type of worm-like creature with sort of spears things. It's a predatory worm-like creature that will eat springtails and kill most of them off if you have them in your tank, which is a good reason to treat your plants before you put them in, so you're not adding them. But very few, other than those that I can think of. The female's hiding between those other plants, but you can see the other two over here. Hopefully that helps, the Formal Top Hat. Ike, can I do a quick description, size, substrate, misting system, floral cleanup crew of this setup? Yeah, I kind of went through the plants at the beginning, but I didn't do a lot of that. I can do the lighting too, so we'll kind of start at the bottom. So this setup is from, I think almost all of it is from New England Herpeticulture, Any Herp, and they're based in Connecticut, I believe, and I've worked with them for quite a few of the setups that I've done. I really like what they do. They're very professional. They have good quality products. So check them out if you haven't, anyherpeticulture.com. And so Mike's not paying me anything to say that. I'm just, letting you know. Anyway, they sent me their dart frog kit for a 29-gallon, which this is. It's a 29-gallon aquarium, which has the same footprint as a 20-gallon long, just taller. And I originally had a 20-gallon high when I started. So this is their lightweight drainage layer. You can use Hydroton instead. Then I've got nylon window screen, and then this is the Any Herp proprietary mix, which is very similar to the ABG mix, but it's their version of it. The one for humid vivariums. They also sell a version for less humid vivariums. And then plant-wise, we'll just go from this side. This is oak leaf fig on the left there. Got a rabbit's foot fern, peacock moss or Selaginella, lemon button fern, 3 different types of bromeliads. I forget their names, but these 2 large ones here are pups of this one, and then between them nestled is another smaller pup of the original I got that the parent has passed away, but the pup I still have. And then this one has produced quite a few pups. I need to start separating the suckers off because the pups are all going crazy. And then there's little mosses and things going on in here too. So let's talk about what else is going on here. Let's see. So substrate, I talked about that. Misting system. I had a mister until today. It was not a machine, not an automated mister. I just used a hand pump mister that I bought at a local pet store, Animal Ark, that's about an hour away from here. And it was working great for me, but my son accidentally overpumped it today because it's one of his jobs to mist the vivariums around the house. And it blew up. The side of it just kind of burst out. And so I explained to him that you don't need to fill it quite as much as he did and don't need to pump it quite as much as he did, and we're good to go. So now I need to get a new mister. So we already talked about the flora. The cleanup crew, I've got springtails in here, and isopods. The last ones I put in here were the Florida Fast, and I'm not sure exactly where we're going with that. Okay. And we've got just the springtails, full Simnia candida springtails were the springtails that need to go out. And that's okay. And that's it as far as the cleanup crew. So I think I still need to talk about the lighting and the top. Okay. My wife just broke into the house. She didn't really break in, but she unlocked. But it kind of sounded funny. I could see why you say that. So this light, I'm not going to aim directly at the light, but this is the Tinkman Herps light from the BioDude, 24-inch long fixture. And then this is just an aquarium cover, and then in the back here is my screen that I had made. Aluminum screen framing, and then there's some very fine weave fabric in there to keep the bugs in. So and okay, catching up here. So there you go, Ike. Now that one plant guy. I've recently started a greenhouse with isopods like kale, cabbage, and tomatoes. Yes, they will probably eat all of those. If you're not using pesticides on them, more's the better. If you are, then make sure to rinse them really well first. And different isopods have different preferences, but in general. So junior, actually mealworms, you could use very, very small young mealworms. You couldn't use mealworms the typical size you buy at the pet store because dart frogs are very specialized to eat things that are only about 1/8 of an inch long or smaller. So they would go for the very, very small mealworms if you're raising your own. And let's see. And could frogs live entirely off a colony of springtails or some other bugs that can live with them? If you had a large enough enclosure, it would be gigantic. And you were able to replenish the leaf litter regularly, my guess is that you could probably have, and you had enough species of little critters living in the soil, you could probably do it, but it would be a gargantuan enclosure and you would have to refresh the leaf litter enough so that they would get enough to eat. So, but otherwise, probably not the size of a vivarium that we normally keep in a house. So, J-Man, welcome. And yes, indeed, that was too much pressure. So, Chris, the Mad Aquarist, glad that you're here, no problem. And the formal top hat, can dart frogs have color mutations like some other animals, crustaceans, and isopods? Yes, there are actually some mutations out there. There's some localities, which are like naturally occurring variations, of course. But there are some mutations of different dart frog colorations too. Yep. And sorry about that sneeze, everybody. It was a fairly small sneeze for me because I was trying to hold it back. But yeah, I blow holes in walls with my sneezes, basically. Dark forest animations? Well, thank you. Ike, when you said 29 gallon. Oh, you could do that. You got a spare one. Nice. Well, that sneeze could cut diamonds. Well, we should try that. I worked briefly. There's all three of them. Worked briefly for a diamond company doing some translation work. It was a temporary job because they didn't need translation for very long. But that's my closest connection to diamonds, I'm afraid. So I don't know if I could ever test it out. So I'll tell you what, Junior. If you want a small, easily cultured beetle larva that dart frogs can eat, and I do feed my dart frogs, the rice flower beetle or confused flower beetle, the common name gets confused, and there's a couple of different species, but Tribolium confusum is the species that I culture, and they look like small mealworms. They're soft. They look almost exactly like small, soft mealworms. They're very small, probably a little over an eighth of an inch long, but not much, and they're thin enough that the frogs totally go for them. So they're super easy to culture, and they're a nice backup to have because you don't always have fruit flies ready. Then you can feed them the rice flower beetle larvae. What is special about this light, the light for herps? Well, this is not a UV light. Some herps require ultraviolet, UVB, ultraviolet B radiation. Some do. Dart frogs don't. But that is special for a lot of reptiles, things like bearded dragons and uromastyx, and it's specifically a lot of the lizards that need it. Some of the snakes can benefit from it, but it seems like few of the snakes need it as much as some of the lizards do. But like chameleons, things like that, without UVB, they can get metabolic bone disease, things like that. So that one plant guy, I wouldn't give them onions, but the kale and cabbage and tomatoes they could probably eat. So Junior, they're actually not the lesser mealworm. They're a totally different genus. You may be talking about Alphatobius diaperinus. It's also called the buffalo worm, or the lesser mealworm, and that they're actually much smaller than those. The flower beetle larvae are much smaller. So the formal top hat, I've actually had an ant colony. I had one years and years ago when my kids were little, and it went really well. I had it for about 3 years, and I built everything myself and collected the queen myself and all that. It was fun. I might do it someday again. So the Spectrum Theater, what's my opinion on Merulanella isopods? There's some fantastically beautiful species in that genus, and some that are just kind of cool and not quite as beautiful. I have not kept any of those. I hope to someday. Currently I don't have a permit to even receive them, so I do not have any. But I will. I'm hoping to get some at some point. I like the tricolors probably the best, but all of them are beautiful. So Ike, are there any plants that are harmful for these dart frogs? Probably some. I know some people, I would be hesitant to keep them with certain carnivores like pitcher plants just because, I don't know, they might get digested. I'm not sure how that works. I don't know if people keep pitcher plants with dart frogs. And if there are any with like some intense toxins on the leaves, I would worry about that too. But most just vivarium plants that you can get at a nursery or whatever are not a problem. I definitely won't put anything spiky in there. But Gaetan. So Gaetan, those small worms that are in with your springtails are probably free-living nematodes, like microworms, banana worms, Walter worms, something along those lines, sounds like. Or they could be grindleworms, inchytraid worms. It depends on how very small they are. If they don't get like over an eighth of an inch, they're probably the nematodes, and if they do get bigger than that, they are probably an inchytraid worm. Basically, how to do with them, they can compete for food. Springtails float. All of those worms sink. So basically you need to devise a method where you can float the springtails, let the worms all sink down to the bottom of the water, and then harvest the springtails and put them into a fresh culture. That's basically what you need to do. So you flood the culture, skim the springtails off after you're sure the worms have all sunk down to the bottom, and start a new culture. That's the best way to do it. Let's see. And somebody asked me before how my lavas were doing, Porcellus scaber lava. Doing well. I haven't noticed any mankai yet, but culture itself is doing well, so I'm sure that would be pretty soon. So Killcast, what do I do for calcium? I dust the food, most feedings, with Repashy Calcium Plus, which also has a number of vitamins in it. And then I also give them the Repashy Vitamin A supplement. I can't remember the name of it right now, but it's a vitamin A supplement that I give them about once a month. And that's the supplementation regimen I give for these frogs. So, oh, we got a nice like spike going. Thank you, J-Man. Always appreciate your help. You help with a lot of things. And I'm always very appreciative of that. Zero Cool's in the house. Any tips on powders or Dalmatians? Make sure powders have a dry area. They do need a moist area, but they definitely need a dry area. They like a lot of fish food. They generally reproduce like mad for you. Give them lots of surface area, things to hide under, and they will do great for you. Decent amount of ventilation. They don't need a huge amount, but they prefer some, and I find that if I give them more, they do better. They also look cooler because then the velvety look comes out on them. If they're too moist, they can survive it, but they don't show the velvetiness so much. Dalmatians, and I'm assuming you're talking about Dalmatian Porcellus scaber, it's the most common one referred to with that name. They are not very picky about ventilation, and they're not very picky about anything. They're super easy, I guess. The main thing is that genetically you get pretty poor examples of Dalmatians after a generation or two, so I recommend either separating the ones that don't have much coloration and just breeding the high expression ones, or occasionally introducing some wild types into your breeding project, not necessarily into your main Dalmatian thing, but set up something else where you cross a Dalmatian with a wild type, then breed that next generation together, and you'll get some more Dalmatians that are going to have some higher pattern. It seems that that's what happens most of the time, and then you can add those higher expression ones into your culture. Okay, so catching up. So the formal top hat, I don't know a ton about tomato frogs, but I do know they have pretty big appetites. So I'm guessing that's part of the reason why they're not housed communally. And W. Marion, how did you source your dart frogs? Frank's Frogs, he's got a website. Frank's Frogs. Frank is one of my bug buddies. In other words, we've been trading bugs and isopods of various sorts, springtails and different things like that, for a long time, for probably 7-8 years or something like that, ever since I got into this kind of stuff. I think he may have been the one, could be wrong, may have been the one who introduced me to the guy I got my first isopods from. But he is the one who got me calico isopods, Dalmatian isopods, and a few other species. So yeah, Frank's Frogs. He still breeds. He lives not too far away from me, about an hour away from me. We used to live closer. But okay, well, Zero Cool. You could have at least 3 in a 55-gallon tank of this species. This is one of the best starter species, honestly. They're not really small, but they're not the biggest dart frog by any means. Terribilis get a lot bigger. This is seriously one of the best species to start with. It's hard to go wrong with Dendrobates leucomelas. They're hardy, they're gregarious, there are really tiny dart frogs. Thumbnail dart frogs, they call them, is one of the names that they give them. And they tend to be obligate egg eaters. In other words, female has to produce eggs for the tadpoles to eat. So she feeds them with feeder eggs. And they're very tiny. They call thumbnails for a reason. They usually about the size that they could fit on your thumbnail of an adult human. And they're very cool. I have not kept any. But you could easily keep 3 of these. You could keep a larger group of these in a 55-gallon tank, no problem. And Chris, the Metaquarist. Oh yeah, I'm interested about the stability of the Piscairolava too. Since it is apparently a codominant trait, which would explain some of the variability. If they're getting, some of them are getting double doses and some of them are only getting 1 dose of the gene. So I'm fascinated by the idea of working with a codominant isopod, because I don't know that I have worked with any codominant isopod genes before, so we'll see how that goes. But I am interested to see too. And Catherine, you're welcome. Yep, that's one way you could get some springtails out of your food recycling bin, yep. And Jamie, do you have any giant bullfrogs? I don't. I can walk down the street to a reservoir where there are some living there, invasive ones. They're not native to my state, but they do live there. They live all over the state in bodies of water. So I know where to go see them. This last summer I took some pictures and posted them on my Instagram. but I don't actually have a bullfrog. So that one plant guy, I've had powder oranges for almost a month and have seen no mankai. What was it like for you when you first got them? Well, this species is a really prolific species, but sometimes it takes them a little while to get started. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out the reflections in the glass. Sometimes it takes them a little while to get started breeding. I would be surprised if in another month you haven't seen any juveniles at all. For example, I got Oreo crumbles back in October, near the beginning of October, and I think it was probably late November before I saw any mankai. I started out with about 20 adults, and I didn't see any, but now there's loads of them in there of various ages. So I just think you probably got a little more time to wait and you'll be fine. Okay. All right. So I agree, W. Marion. Dart frogs are definitely fascinating and beautiful. So, and make it, Kate, I feel you. You know, genetics with isopods especially can be really confusing because there's some stuff that doesn't make any sense that's going on here. A lot of creatures we're working with mostly single gene recessives and some codominants and a few dominant traits. With isopods, there are some traits that just right now are not making any sense. Like the Oniscus ocellus species, there's some genetic stuff going on with there. Finger Lakes Feeders is working with that. Some really weird stuff going on. It doesn't even make any sense, so they can be really confusing. So W. Marion, I can try to put that in the description. I can't do that right now without messing up the post, but I will say, or messing up the live stream. But any of the mods, if you can put the scientific name of these dart frogs, Dendrobates leucomelas, the bumblebee dart frog, if you can put that in the chat, that would be awesome. And make it Kate. No, they're not cane toads. They're actually true bullfrogs, the ones that are near us. I did used to live next to cane toads. We had cane toads all over our neighborhood when I lived in Hawaii, but they don't make it this far north. We have toads in this area, but like we have the boreal toad, I think is the one that lives around here. They're kind of rare now. But they are, the one that's here is the true bullfrog. What's the most money I've spent on a pet? You mean like purchase price of that pet? I don't know. I'm going to have to think about that one. I did spend over $200 getting my first rubber duckies, but individually they were probably not that much. I don't know. It might actually have been a crested gecko. I think it was $175 for the crested gecko that I got. Okay, and W. Marion, maybe you'll see there that Newt Scamander, one of our mods, put the scientific name in the chat there for you. So thank you, Newt, for taking care of that. So dart frogs are actually not great swimmers, and you can put a pool of water in, but if you do, you need to make sure they can get out. It should be shallow, and a lot of people don't actually keep the pools in there because they can get full of bacteria really fast in this humid, warm environment, so it's not great. Unless if you're breeding them, in which case you need to put a pool in there so that they can drop the tadpoles into it and so that they can put the eggs in it. For the eggs, you need a really shallow pool, and I actually have one in here. You can't see it in this little cave. Can't see it at all. There's a petri dish in there. There's also a petri dish in this little cave, and the petri dish holds some water which allows them to spawn, and the tadpoles hatch in that little thin film of water, and then they hatch. They grow up there for a little while, and then one of the parents, usually the father, will carry the tadpole to a deeper pool of water, and so you put like little 2-ounce deli cups with a little pebble in there, and the dart frogs will jump in and release the tadpole and jump back out. Oh, Make It Kate's got to go. Thank you for joining in, and Merry Christmas to you. And Jamie has a pale Oniscus ocellus. Pretty tempted to try and ice that. It's really pretty. Yeah, there's some really pretty ones that they're producing. The Mardi Gras are amazing, and there are other types of pale ones that are showing up. So there's 2 of them there. Hello, Nicholas. Yeah, thank you for joining in, Killcast 2. And you're welcome, W. Marion. No problem. So I will need to cut out in just a minute here. So are there any other questions anybody has before I go? I want to make sure I cover any if you have any. This is a pretty good shot of this little frog's face. I'm glad all 3 of them finally showed up. I love the toe tapping. Check out the toe tapping. You can see it right now. Love that. They usually do that when they're hunting.
People, they say Merry Christmas.
Oh, my wife Kelly says Merry Christmas to everyone. And oh, hold on. There we go. Zero Cool, I have tons of zebras. I probably have over 1,000 zebras. Probably 2,000 zebras. I don't even know. Oh, Merry Christmas coming back, Amore. From lots of people. From Jamie and Ike and Zero Cool and J-Man and Filigree Aquatics and W. Marion, Newt Scamander. Yep, lots of people. Catherine. How do you say your last name, Catherine? I'm not sure. Oh, that one plant guy, my Instagram is just Aquarimax Pets, at Aquarimax Pets. So, see all those Merry Christmases?
Yay.
Yep, she's here. My wife Kelly is here.
Hi.
Ames, you say Ames. Okay, cool. Oh, Critters and More says it too. And everybody's saying hello to you. There you go. I guess you can see that. She can see over my shoulder now, so. Can you house 2 of the same dart frog breed together or even different breeds? Well, if a male and female pair for most species works fairly well, you don't want to put necessarily males or females, like 2 males or 2 females together for most species. With this particular species, they're a little bit more forgiving in that you can keep a male and a couple of females together, or sometimes even, I think some people do 2 males and a female. I have a male and 2 females and it works fine. The females are probably eating some of each other's eggs. And some people keep different breeds together, but that can get complicated. Recommended frog for a newbie? Well, if you're doing dart frogs specifically, this species is great for a beginner. It's probably one of the best beginner species for dart frogs. Not the only one you could go with by any means, but a good one for beginners. If you're talking about frogs in general, then that's a different thing. Because this frog requires some things that are a little bit more expensive than some other frogs. You can get frogs that are cheaper to set up for, and also cheaper to purchase. Not that necessarily makes them easier, just because they're cheaper. But. Okay, can you feed frogs with dwarf isopods, and how many do you need if you feed them with them only? Thanks in advance, and Merry Christmas. Okay, Carls, you're welcome, and Merry Christmas to you. So, how many do you need? I would not recommend feeding them only isopods because they eat too much. The dart frogs eat too much. You would have to raise an incredible amount of isopods for one. Not that necessarily would be impossible, but it would probably be, you'd take more space and more time doing that than you would raising fruit flies probably, because fruit flies just reproduce really fast. Also, I don't know that would be a good staple diet for them. Isopods are certainly a good item to add to the diet, but not necessarily a good, just, if that's the only food item, I'm not sure that would work out all that well. But you would need many, many bins of isopods if you're just doing like dwarf whites or something. I guess there are species you could probably raise. If you raised, say, dairy cows and you just took out small monkey, you could probably do a little better that way. But I would just say don't consider isopods as their staple food source. What is my opinion on baguettes? I like them, especially with like cheese and fresh tomatoes. They're good, that kind of thing. Yeah, Critters and More are talking about tinks. Tinctorius is a dart frog related closely to this species, but it's a little more aggressive. So, and I have produced tadpoles from this group and raised them and sold them. I've actually had people who watch the channel have ended up with the babies, have purchased babies from me. So I raised, I think 4 total that I have sold from this group. I don't like actively try to breed them very often. But if I get tadpoles, I do try to, raise them. The last group of tadpoles got eaten, unfortunately. So that was sad. Oh yeah, when it gets too dry, it's hard to find the isopods, that one plant guy. It's true. Any clear way to tell the males from the females in these dart frogs? Well, some people talk about there's the slant angle of their back and the shape of their toes and everything, but what I have done, I memorized the patterns on their back because they're all unique. And then I watched which one called, which is the male who's by the little door there. You can see by the cocoa hut. I just memorized their pattern, saw him calling, and knew he was the male. That's how I did it. And let's see. Oh, in general and cheap, yeah. African dwarf frogs are easy to find, fairly easy to keep. You just set them up basically for like tropical fish, but they need to eat some live food and some meaty frozen or fresh food of some kind. And they can eat dry food too, but they'll need some of the other. And they're actually pretty easy to keep. And you're welcome. Do I ever get pets for Christmas? Not usually. I often get some pet-related things, but I don't usually get the animal for Christmas. Well, our budgie my daughter got for Christmas 5 years ago or so, but she knew it was coming. It was not a surprise, and it didn't arrive on Christmas Day. We went the day after Christmas and picked it up from the breeder, but she got some kind of note saying, "Yep, you got a chance to go pick out a budgie," kind of thing. And I think that's usually the best way to handle such things. If you're going to give creatures as gifts, is make sure whoever gets them knows about it and wants them first. And the species in the stream here is Dendrobates leucomelas. One of the admins, I think it was Newt, put it in the chat a little while ago. And Nathan, I wouldn't feed them those unless they were very, very tiny. Like not adult size. They need to be much smaller than adult size. So if they're maybe up to 1/4 inch long because they're skinny, you could try feeding them. But I would not try anything bigger than that as far as the worms go. What aquatic animals do you have right now? Quite a few. We have an axolotl, for example. We've got some goldfish. I got a breeding colony of endlers that won't quit, blue star endlers. I've got a colony of multis, the shell-dwelling cichlids. We've got some shrimp of various types. We've got opaiula shrimp. I've got 3 tanks full of opaiula shrimp. Got my blue star endler tank also has assassin snails in it. It also has blue velvet shrimp in it. We've got, my daughter has a tank full of snowball shrimp and some coolie loaches in with them. Yeah, those are some of them. Yeah, Junior, that's really not a bad idea. The dwarf African frogs are a pretty good one. There's some others out there that are good too, but they might be the easiest as long as you're comfortable with setting up something that's like a fish tank but has dart frogs in it. Despite the temptation many people feel to get fish in with the dart frogs, I don't recommend putting fish in with the dart frogs because anything small enough not to compete heavily with the dart frogs is going to probably be food. Like if you could put guppies in with them, but they'll probably eat the baby guppies. But even the adult guppies will compete with the frogs for food because they're much better at finding food fast. And so the frogs often starve to death when you keep them with fish. There are ways around that, but yeah, I don't necessarily recommend it for that reason. So Nathan, what are some affordable brands for good quality vivarium lights? I'm currently building a dart frog vivarium myself. Well, I have purchased dart frog vivarium lights from Any Herpeticulture. They've got the Jungle Dawns, is one of the ones that I purchased. And I like the Tinkman Herps from the Biodude. I haven't really done a whole lot with those are the 2 brands of lights that I usually use for LEDs that aren't on aquariums. These days, the aquarium LED lights are getting to the point that you can purchase some of those. Like I use Night Cruise on some of my aquariums, and I think the Night Cruise would do okay on a lot of these, like on a dart frog vivarium. Some of the higher light ones, I think they'd be okay. But when I was getting into dart frogs, LED lights except for things like jungle dawns were kind of crummy. But they've come a long way in the years since I started, so. Do you have any pets that you trusted your kids with but don't really anymore? Well, my kids are actually pretty good at stuff like that. They've grown up with it, and a lot of them have been trained by me to take care of the critters. And so they're really, I'm fortunate that way. They're really good. I don't have to worry about it so much. Now we're getting some decent views of these little frogs. It's a male in the back. See how the yellow markings near the terminal end? It makes a little drop shape. I don't know if you can see what I mean, but that's the male. And the female has like the opposite of that. This female here has a yellow drop, and he has a black drop surrounded by yellow. So that's one way to tell them apart. So do I have certain days that I post videos? Yes. Tuesday's live stream day. Friday is other video day. So twice a week. And I do have a video coming out for you on Friday. It is not specifically Christmas themed, but this ornament is. I know you can't really see it because of the light in the room right now, but there. Yep, so I do live streams twice a week. I'm not live streams. I do videos twice a week, and one of them is a live stream on Tuesdays. Okay. So, thank you, Newt. So Mr. and Mrs. Morelia, quiet starter dart frog recommend. Well, that's a good question. These aren't particularly loud. They do make a call that is certainly recognizable, but I wouldn't say that it's awakened me or anything like that. They're not too bad. It's kind of a trill. It's kind of like something like that. And it's not too loud. So silly Kerberos. They're too cute to be scary. I like it. Felipe says, wondering if the calcium with vitamins for reptiles can be used for isopods. Merry Christmas from Denmark. Well, Merry Christmas to you as well. And the calcium with vitamins for reptiles can be used for isopods. I just say just give small amounts on a surface like cork bark or a magnolia leaf or something that's not as likely to, have it soak in and cause issues. But I like to use eggshell or cuttlebone myself, but you could do that. And oh yes, W. Marion will probably do a refresher on training for that. That's true. Formal top hat. The next live stream will be next Tuesday, and I often decide what it will be focused on based on comments from patrons, for example. Like today I answered Jose's question, and last week I intended the entire video to be about the same topic. I was going to do it mostly on Porcellio expansus, but of course the video kind of crashed and didn't work out. But a lot of times I'll do it that way. And so requests, I'll see what I can do about requests. And Nathan, I actually do have a fruit fly culturing video. It's old, but it still works. Still valid information, although I do use a different mix now, but that mix worked for me for years, so it's not a problem. The media mix. But yeah, it's called A Quick Guide to Culturing Flightless Fruit Flies or something like that. And yeah, so you can check that out. And how do you access your isopod shop? Go to aquarimax.com, and there's a link on the first page just to the stock price list, which has all the isopods available for sale on it. Of course, I'm not doing a lot of shipping right now. I'm doing a little, but not a lot. I'm just shipping express right now, so until February. So not a lot of shipping going on, but a little bit. Yeah, so that's there. It does need to be updated a little bit, but I'm going to try to update it soon. So Newt, yes, I did. I did make that noise. With practice, I can do it even better, but I wasn't ready. But yeah, I can actually do a decent cricket when I'm ready. Let me see. Well, I wasn't warmed up, but there's something. Okay. Do you sterilize your eggshells or just drop them in? I bake them first. I don't know if it's necessary, but I do that. I think it was probably louder than a real frog. And Mr. and Mrs. Morelia, here we go. There is the enclosure. Let's get the whole thing in there. Try it. Sorry, the focus is a little bit off, but that is the whole enclosure. Yeah. So newt, basically, this is what you would call, a linguist would call, I guess, a velar trill. I'm making the trill part with my velum, which is in the back of your throat. So like that little flap of skin in the back of your throat. Would it be possible to ever add photos of the isopod next to the price and name? Yes, that is in the plan. I need to do that on my website. I haven't done it yet. I do actually have a different page called Isopod Species that has pictures next to the names, but I need to do that on my price list as well. Yeah, that's kind of a funny story behind the cricket noise, but now I can't even remember what it is, how I learned that. But it's basically you have to kind of gurgle in the back of your throat while you're whistling. And if you can figure out how to do that, you've got it. Oh my goodness, I didn't realize what time it was. It's been an hour. So you're welcome, Mr. and Mrs. Morelia. And thank you to those of you such as Newt and Catherine who are appreciative of my vocal skills to resemble frogs and crickets and such things. So, I think I need to cut out. I need to go help make dinner and stuff like that, but it has been great. And to those of you who are celebrating Christmas in the upcoming days, Merry Christmas. And to those of you who are celebrating other holidays, Happy Holidays. Those of you who are not celebrating anything, I just hope you have a great week. And the formal top hat, actually, when I was a kid, I could do a good cat, but my voice has changed and it's too high, too low. My voice is too low to do a good cat. So sorry about that. And I'm glad it was worth staying up for, Catherine. So it's Catherine Ames. Okay, cool. And Armadillidium vulgare. Yep, sorry that you missed this one. I will be having another next week. So see you all later. Happy holidays and stay safe and stay healthy, everybody.